Okay, we're returning in this video to the web page. So far I've got a page that takes in a matriculation number and looks up the student's name based on that matriculation number. And that's in this file index.php. We're only going to have a couple of pages in this whole application, maybe two, maybe three. So this is the SQL to look up the students. This is the PHP to look up the student's name from the database. Now what I want to do is to figure out which modules that student is taking. Each student should be taking 3. And I've worked out an SQL statement to do that, and I put it in a file. I put it in the file sample queries. So this one here, this is my SQL that finds the modules for one student. Let me just try that. So I want to do MySQL minus u Scott minus p tiger and JISC, and I'll just try that SQL statement. Just check it works. Okay, it didn't. I had an error in it. The PRS code field is ambiguous. When I added in this join to ins PRS, I left in place this thing here, PRS code. So that's the thing that's ambiguous. It's ambiguous because that exact field name shows up in 2 tables, ins PRS, which is the personnel file, personnel table, and camsmo, no, not camsmo, insmod. So insmod here, insmod contains PRS code and insprs contains PRS code. So SQL is being a bit wet. It can't guess which table it comes from. In practice, it makes absolutely no difference which one it takes it. That's not true. I want to take it from insmod. I want to take it from insmod. The reason being, if I take it from insmod, if it happened to be null, then it would show up. Actually, no, it doesn't make any difference. But I'm going to put in a left join here. I'm going to make that join a left join. I'm making it a left join because there's a possibility that you've got a module without a module leader. If that was to happen, we still want feedback. Anyway, I've changed it to a left join, which will take care of that case, and I'll try the query again. That's better. I've got the details, I've got the module code, I've got the module name, I've got the code of the member of staff, and if I decide to put pictures in, that'll be handy. I've also got the first name and surname of the member of staff who led the module. Don't know that I'm going to use that data, but it's nice to have. So I've made a change to this file. I'm going to save and quit, and I'm going to use that SQL in my PHP. So the SQL statement that I just worked out is this one here, $SQL equals, I'm going to use double quotes there, and I'm going to right click paste. This is a variable, so that's going to depend, that's the module code of the student, the SPR code, and that'll change each time potentially. I'm leaving hard-coded AYR code and PSL code, so my application at the moment is tied to a particular year and trimester, and we're not going to be able to reuse this code at the end of this. So this application won't work next year, and it won't even work in the second trimester. But that wasn't mentioned in the specification, so if someone wants to fix that, they're going to have to pay me to come back. Okay, that's a shocking thing to do. We're not worried. We'll just deal with 1 year in a minute. It's hard enough as it is. Okay, that's my SQL code. How do I run it? Well, I'm using more or less the same thing that I used before. I can reuse this connection. So the connection I set up is still good. I've already done the welcome student. Let's put in a comment now. So this is get a list of modules. Okay, so I'm going to reuse that connection, but the SQL statement has changed. All of these lines here, they still work. In fact, I think they're going to work exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, no, 7 good lines. Let me do 7 capital Y, that's for Yank, that's the Yank 7 lines, and capital P, Shift P, paste them in. So I make up the SQL statement, I prepare it, I bind in exactly the same variable that I did before, so that gap there, that question mark, that's the hole that gets filled in by this bind parameter, and that should be the SPR code, which is this value here, the value for U, which came in off the internet. So I bind, I execute, and before I did an if statement, because I was expecting 0 or 1, in this case I'm expecting exactly 3, but a very common pattern we use is while. Okay, so this phrase here, while $row equals $cur, that's the cursor, and that's fetch row. So we do this a lot. And what it means is that continue to read a single row from the database and stuff that result in row, and when we run out of data, then row will return null and the while statement will fail and we won't loop anymore. So inside the loop, for every question we're going to print please answer questions about, and $row 0 should tell me what it is we're answering questions about. Let's make that stand out. We'll make it H2. H2 is probably going to, so H2 is your second level heading, so it's probably going to be a bit too prominent. But let's do that, and we'll reload. Okay. All right. I'm liking this. I think I want to give myself an option for styling, so I'm going to print a div at the beginning. Just to kind of group things together, and I'm going to give it a class, and that class is a module. Okay, so that's at the beginning, and at the end I will close that div, print, and I'll show you how we can style that. Okay, so we've got a div, we've got an H2, and let's have a sample question in there. Print. So let's say this is a p tag. What did you think of it? Our questions are going to be more precise than that, but I want to just have a look to see what it looks like. Okay, I'm going to have about 19 questions for each module in all. So now what I want to do is to block these. I want to outline each module so they kind of stand out, they separate out from each other. I want to tab them eventually, but I've given myself the option to do that by putting the div in. If we look at a typical one, this one here, if I inspect it, you can see that should be an H2 inside a that should be an H2 inside a div. There we go. So I've got 3 divs, and inside each div I've got an H2, and then I've got 1 P, and I'll have a whole bunch of those eventually. So I've got the option to put some styling in. Let's see how we might do that. A quick and dirty way would be to here put in a style node, but a neater way to do it is to, in the header, I haven't got a header, I should have one really, put in a link node, link rel equals style sheet, and with a link you either have an href or an src. I think it's an href. href equals, and this is module feedback.css. Okay, let's try that and reload. And if I've also got my debug stuff going on, let's have a look at the console while I reload. And that's good. It looked for the mf CSS and didn't find it. Let's put some in. So vi mf.css. So I just put in that div. That was a class module. That's probably not a good name. And the important thing is I want to have a border. So border, which is solid and thin and grey. Let's see what that looks like. Reload. Okay, it's pretty dreadful, but it is more or less what I wanted. If you put in a border, you always have to put in some padding as well, otherwise it looks terrible. So padding, let's go for 1x. Okay, and we should find, that's good. The modules are actually touching each other. You can see here we've got a thin line, and here between these two I've got a thin line above and thin line below, and it just looks ugly. If I separate these things out, it'll look better. Let's put, and one way to separate them out is to give it a margin, and margin is going to be 1x as well. So let's reload. Okay, that's too small a margin between these two. 3. Reload. Okay, that'll do. Alright, I'm quite liking that. I've got a loop going. I've got a section for each module. There are 3 sections because there are 3 modules, and the next stage is to put in a whole bunch of questions. So for each of these modules, I want to ask a whole load of questions. We'll do that in the next video.